My own brother stood at his wedding altar and pointed at me. In front of 200 guests, he told my fiancée she deserved better, then kissed her hand like I wasn't even there. Everyone clapped. Nobody stopped him. But 3 months later, that same hand would slap him and beg me for mercy. If you've ever been betrayed by someone who was supposed to love you, stay till the end and hit subscribe because karma is about to get loud.
My name is Callum. I'm 34 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that if you worked hard and stayed loyal, good things eventually found you. I own a small furniture shop, the kind of place that smells like sawdust and old varnish, where broken things come in and leave whole again. That was my whole philosophy, really. Fix what's broken. Don't throw it away. I met Odessa 2 years ago. She ran a flower shop 3 doors down from mine, and I still remember the first time she walked in holding a chipped vase, asking if I could save it. I told her, some things aren't meant to be thrown out just because they've got a few cracks. She smiled at that. I think that's the moment I fell for her, honestly. Not some big dramatic scene, just a quiet certainty. We got engaged last spring. I built her a rocking chair with my own hands, oak, sanded down over 3 slow weekends for the home we were going to share. I remember sitting in that chair the night I finished it, just looking at it, thinking, this is what forever looks like. Simple, steady, earned. My older brother, Desmond, was around a lot during that time. He always had been, the golden one, my parents called him. Charming, successful, the kind of guy who filled up every room he walked into. He'd stop by the shop, stop by Odessa's flower shop too, always with some compliment that sat just a little too long in the air. My mother used to wave it off. That's just Desmond. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Looking back now, I think some part of me already knew. There's a difference between a brother checking in and a brother circling. But I didn't want to see it. Not 1 month before my own wedding. Not when everything finally felt like it was falling into place. The night before the wedding, I sat in that rocking chair one last time. Odessa was staying at her sister's. Tradition, she said. I remember thinking how lucky I was. How after everything, I'd finally built something nobody could take from me. I had no idea that the next morning, standing at that altar, I was about to lose everything I thought I'd earned, in front of everyone who was supposed to be there to celebrate it with me.
The morning of the wedding, I woke up before my alarm, just laid there for a while, staring at the ceiling, feeling that strange calm you get right before something big, like the world's holding its breath with you. I remember thinking, today's the day, everything makes sense. But if I'm honest with myself, the cracks had started weeks before that. Small things. Things I noticed and then talked myself out of noticing, if that makes sense. Desmond had started showing up at Odessa's flower shop more than usual, said he was picking up arrangements for a client or dropping something off for our mother. Always some reason. Always some excuse that sounded fine on its own, but together they started to add up to something I didn't want to count. There was one dinner about 3 weeks before the wedding where Desmond stood up with his glass and gave this toast, said something about how life's too short not to choose what truly makes you happy, even if it's inconvenient, even if it surprises people. Everyone laughed, clinked glasses. I remember sitting there thinking, that's an odd thing to say at your brother's engagement dinner. But I let it go. I told myself I was reading too much into it. Odessa started getting quieter around that time too. Not distant exactly, just somewhere else. I'd catch her staring at her phone a second too long before locking it. Once, a text came through while we were on the couch. I saw the name on the screen. Just a letter. D. She closed it fast, said it was about flower deliveries. I nodded, didn't ask again. I want to be honest with you about something. I saw it all, every piece. I just didn't want to put them together, because putting them together meant my brother, my own blood, might be doing something I couldn't undo. My mother noticed I'd gotten quiet one night at dinner, pulled me aside in the kitchen, put her hand on my arm, and said, "Don't overthink it. Weddings make everyone emotional, even Desmond." I wanted so badly to believe her. She was my mother. Why would she cover for something like that? So I stayed quiet. I kept sanding down that rocking chair in my shop after hours, kept telling myself the wedding would fix all this static in the air, that once we said our vows, whatever this tension was, it would settle. I didn't know that quiet was costing me, that every time I looked away, I was handing someone else the chance to step closer. I've thought a lot about that since, how staying silent doesn't always keep the peace. Sometimes it just delays the moment everything falls apart. I had no idea how right I was. The ceremony started right on time. String lights above us, the smell of fresh peonies from Odessa's own shop, my father's old watch on my wrist for luck. I stood at that altar and watched her walk toward me in white, and for one perfect moment, I forgot every doubt I'd been carrying. I just thought, there she is, my whole life, right there. The officiant went through the vows, got to that line, the one every wedding has, the one nobody expects to matter. Does anyone object to this union? Silence, just for a second, the kind of silence that feels too long before you understand why. Then I heard the chair scrape back. Desmond stood up. He said he couldn't stay silent anymore. Said something about not being able to watch this happen, about connections that had been building for weeks, about not wanting to live with the regret of saying nothing. My ears were ringing so loud I barely caught half of it. He walked up, right up to the altar, right past me, and Odessa didn't stop him. She looked at me, tears in her eyes, hand already reaching for his, and she didn't say a word in my defense, not one. She just took his hand in front of 200 people, in front of my mother who covered her mouth, in front of phones already lifting to record it. I stood there in my own wedding suit, watching my brother win a woman I'd built an entire life around, and I couldn't even make my legs move. No shouting, no scene. I just turned, walked back down that aisle alone, past every face I'd known my whole life, and none of them stopped me either. I didn't know it yet, but that walk out the door was the last quiet moment before everything I thought I knew came undone. I closed the shop for 2 weeks after that. Didn't answer calls, didn't want to see anyone's face, because every face reminded me of that aisle, that silence, that walk out the door. Some relatives took Desmond's side. My aunt actually said to me, at least she was honest before the marriage. Like honesty counted for something after 200 people watched me get replaced. The only person who kept showing up was Thaddeus, an old army buddy of mine. He'd come by with coffee, sit in the shop with me even when I didn't talk. Just stayed. Didn't ask me to be okay. Just stayed. I heard through people the way you always hear things, that Desmond and Odessa had already moved in together. Fast. Loud about it, too. Pictures,
posts, like they needed everyone to see how happy they were. Then one afternoon, driving past her old place out of habit more than anything, I saw it on the curb. The rocking chair. My rocking chair. 3 weeks of sanding, staining, careful joints, sitting out with the trash like it never meant anything. That chair took me 3 weeks to build. It took her 3 seconds to throw it away. I didn't cry over her that day. I cried over the chair. Funny how grief finds the smallest thing to break you open. Weeks passed. I started opening the shop again, mostly because the silence at home got harder to sit in than the silence at work. Then Thaddeus called me one evening, and I could hear it in his voice before he even said it. Something had shifted. He worked in finance, did some digging out of loyalty more than curiosity, and found something I never expected. Desmond had been pulling money out of our father's business accounts for over a year. Quiet withdrawals, dressed up as loans he never repaid. Money I'd actually been replacing myself, without telling anyone, just to keep our father from the stress of it. Then it got worse. Odessa hadn't fallen for Desmond, not really. She'd fallen for a story. His fake investments, his made-up success, the version of him he built for people to admire. She married the performance, not the man. The whole thing came apart in public. An investor confronted Desmond at some business dinner, called him out in front of people he'd been trying to impress for years. Word spreads fast in a small town, faster than any of us expect. A few days later, Odessa showed up at my shop, eyes red, hands shaking. "I made a mistake," she said. "I didn't know who he really was." I just stood there, sanding a table leg, and said nothing at all. Desmond showed up not long after her, like he'd heard she'd come by and couldn't stand not having the last word. He walked into my shop like he still had a right to, hands in his pockets, that same easy charm he always wore like armor. "We're brothers, he said. "Family forgives." I didn't answer right away. I kept my eyes on the table leg in my hands, running the sandpaper slow, steady. Somewhere in the quiet, I felt Odessa watching us both, like she was finally seeing something clearly for the first time. Then she turned on him, right there in my shop, told him she knew everything now, the stolen money, the lies to their own father, the version of himself he'd built out of nothing but debt and charm. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. "You didn't just lie to me," she said. "You lied to everyone who ever loved you." My mother arrived not long after. Someone must have called her. And when she heard it, really heard what her golden son had done to his own father's business, something in her broke too. I watched my mother, the woman who always excused him, raise her hand and slap him across the face. Not for me, for herself, for every excuse she'd made. Desmond stood there stunned, rubbing his cheek, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. I didn't yell, didn't move from my workbench. I just set the sandpaper down and looked at him. "You didn't lose me for a woman, Desmond," I said. "You lost yourself for a lie." Then I asked them both to leave. Calm, quiet. The same shop he used to call my little hobby was the last place he'd ever stand in as my brother. 6 months passed. My shop grew in ways I never expected. A local paper ran a piece on restored furniture, and suddenly people were driving in from towns I'd never even worked in. I hired my first employee that spring. Desmond's business collapsed not long after that dinner, quietly, then all at once, the way these things tend to. He moved out of state before the year was out, away from every face that used to admire him. Odessa reached out one more time, a message, nothing dramatic. I read it, and for the first time, I didn't feel that old pull to respond. Not out of anger, just peace. The kind you can't fake. I built a new rocking chair last month, different wood this time, different joints. Not for a home I was building with someone else, just for me. I used to think losing her was the worst day of my life. Now I know it was the day I got my life back. If you believe karma always finds its way home, share this with someone who needs it and subscribe. The truth always comes out.